All right, Shabbos, say good morning. Good morning. Let us begin. We're continuing in Eretz Hashem this morning in Tzidkas HaTzaddik, and we find ourselves. This is our third chelik, our third shir on the first sif in Tzidkas HaTzaddik. So if you remember again, last week we began. Sorry, thank you, Sammy. We began with the idea that the Rebbe introduced us to the concept of chipazon, of haste. And he explained that the first mitzvah that we had as a people was Karban Pesach. And while there are many distinctions between what we call Pesach, the first Karban Pesach, and Pesach Doros, Karban Pesach for future generations, one of the most notable distinctions was the concept of chipazon, of haste. That Karban Pesach of Mitzrayim had to be consumed in a state of hurried haste, and no such concept applies to future generations. So the Rebbe says, why is that? And he explained profoundly that Karban Pesach represented our initiation into the service of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And when one wants to make a dramatic change in life, that dramatic change must be made quickly. Now we're picking up on page Aleph, on the left-hand paragraph, in Be'urei HaChasidus, that middle section there, and let's pick up 2, 4, 6 lines up from the bottom. Again, in the middle section of Be'urei HaChasidus, left-hand column, 6 lines from the bottom. Kilomar, Tchilas brichas ha'adam mitavas gufo, hi kemo ha'bricha shebaruch hu yisrael mishibud Mitzrayim. Now literally translated, when a person wants to run away from the desires of his body, which effectively means when a person wants to affect change within their life, the way to affect change is the same way that our ancestors affected change in Egypt. In other words, they affected that change with haste. We have to affect that change with haste as well. V'atam lekach shebe'emes haschalas hisalus ha'adam tzricha liyos dafka b'chipazon u'mihiros. Any initial change has to occur with a sense of expedited haste. Why? He's now both saying, we've already spoken about this before last week. What's the whole haste thing? The whole haste thing is there's a concern that when I want to make change, even once I've decided I'm going to make change, the concern is that the longer I wait to do it, the more diminished the probability that I'm actually going to do it. Right? This whole idea, like I mentioned last week, we've seen this in every sefer we've learned so far, that when you want to accomplish something in life, do it now. If you don't do it now, something is going to get in the way and down the road prevent you from doing so. The concept of chipazon says, if you want to affect change, do something right now. Doesn't have to be everything, but do something right now, because if you don't initiate the process, in this moment of spiritual awakeness, this moment of spiritual awakening, then something's going to get in the way and something's going to prevent you from doing what it is that you feel you need to do. In the moment of clarity, take action. Doesn't have to be complete action, but do something. That's the concept of chipazon. He says, "Hu mipnei sha'haschala likonis la'avodas Hashem Yisbarach hi chovaso shel adam lenatek es atzmo b'kol tavas ha'olam." Page base, Mazel Tov. Right, it's on the page. Right, because again, in that moment of awakening, right, when a person realizes that now he's calling it at a time that a person enters himself into the service of Hashem. But for our purposes, what this really means is, in that moment when a person knows that he wants to make change in his life, we'll just do the literal translation. He is obligated to go ahead and detach himself from all the desires of the world. So I'm saying, so the idea is change, right? Change is difficult. Why is change difficult? Because it's change, right? Because we are creatures of habit. And once I settle into a habit, once I settle into a routine, once I settle into a system, a way of living, the ability to uproot that and overturn that, even not in a totally comprehensive way, but even in a small way, is dramatically told. You know what I'll say? You know what I think about? This for a second, right? It's been a while since we've learned Tzidkas HaTzaddik, right? So we've been starting shir, 5:50, right? 5:55. Isn't it incredible to see how difficult 5 minutes is? 5 minutes. And again, okay, you could time it, it's sleep, it's not just that. It's It's been a long time, right? You settle into a groove, and suddenly again, 5-minute shift. It's so much more than just 5 minutes of sleep. It's so much more than just it's change. Change is difficult. Change is overwhelming, and therefore the Rebbe says, you gotta. If the moment you decide you're doing it, you have to do something in that chipazon, haste. You got to do something right then and there, because if you don't, ultimately, again, whatever obstacles to change are going to present themselves will set in, and change won't occur. He goes on, he says, I'm on page Beis in the Biurei Hasidus, second line in on the right-hand column. This is something that is very difficult. This is beautiful. Therefore, a person will say, when that moment of awakening, right? When that moment of inspiration comes, everybody has that moment where like, this is what I have to do. This is the change I have to make. The Rebbe says you have to do whatever you can to preserve that moment. V'lachpos al osaraga. What does that mean? V'lachtov esaraga has orus shener belibo. You have to grab that moment of awakening in your heart. Ulamaher belilehis yashe v'lishko b'daito amadavar roi lo lefi madrigaso v'lotzeis mehem lisnatek mitava sa'olam hazeh ba'ofen lamayla min adas. So this is incredible. Therefore, the Rebbe says the most important thing in life is in that moment of inspiration, grab it. Grab it. You have to do something with it in that moment. In that moment of clarity, you have to seize that moment, fan that flame, and effect some level of change. In the both side, I want to be clear. The Rebbe is not telling us over here that we have to go ahead and effect immediate, comprehensive, total change. That's not what he's saying. What he's saying is when you decide you want to do something with your life, start it right then and there. Whatever it is. It could be a very small step. Be a very small step, but chipazon, the first step in avodas Hashem, when you decide you want to do something a little bit differently in your life, is start doing something right then and there. Don't wait, because waiting is the enemy of progress. Waiting is the enemy of progress. You wait, chances are you're not going to end up affecting any level of change. He goes on, he says, Kiulai. Finish up Sifalate. This is actually very beautiful. Rebbe say this is profound, and this is the end of this sif. The Rebbe says there's only one thing that has to happen quickly. What's the one thing that has to happen quickly? What has to happen quickly? The first step. The first step. After that, the Rebbe says, take your time. Right? This is incredible. You see, what Rabbi HaTzaddik is saying is as follows. I think I spoke about this last week, right? That Rav Kook, whose yahrzeit was on Erev Shabbos, Gimel Elul, Rav Kook has these two different levels of tshuva. Tshuva pitomis and tshuva hadragis. There are many more than two levels, but he talks about these two concepts, right? Instantaneous tshuva and gradual tshuva. And so, the names pretty much say everything. Instantaneous tshuva is like the guy that quits smoking cold turkey. Just everything changes. Everything changes right there in a moment. Versus tshuva hadragis, which is incremental change. Rav Kook discusses, which is a higher level of tshuva. But I think for most of us, we would agree that incremental change usually is better. Right? In other words, that although interestingly enough, Rav Kook, in a certain respect, says that instantaneous change is so much more profound. He calls it like a lightning bolt in the soul. That there is like this just flash of light that is so dramatic and so overwhelming that it propels a person to just do incredible things with his existence. Okay, but leaving that aside, I think most of us would agree, just from our own lives, that incremental change is better. Rabbi HaTzaddik subscribes to that as well. Rabbi HaTzaddik says, absolutely, la'at ula'at, that's his lashon over here. V'achar kach, after you have that moment of chipazon, look what he writes, right? After you have that moment of chipazon, shuv yelech b'mesinus ula'at, then go slowly. Rabbi HaTzaddik is saying, I'm not rushing you to make tshuva pitomis. I'm not rushing you to go ahead and change everything about your life in a moment. What is HaTzaddik urging us to do? What's the only thing that requires chipazon? The only part that requires haste is the first step. The first step, right? The first unit of action. You have to do something, because once you do something, that initiates the process of change. Once you've initiated the process, then ultimately, again, you could allow it to unfold la'at, la'at. After, all you need is that first step, stepping into this new world of change, stepping into this new chapter of my existence. That, you gotta do something, and it's not just a decision. It has to be an action, it has something actional. Once you do that b'chipazon, then HaTzaddik says, the rest can be done la'at u'la'at. The logic being that if you don't go ahead and do something decisive quickly, chances are the change is not going to occur. But once you've initiated that process of change, then you could even take your time. You could do it slowly. You could do it incrementally, because you've begun the process. We'll have to stop over here. And he says, interestingly enough, by the way, he just ends off. He says, Kedin Pesach Doros. He says, once again, this is the difference between Pesach Mitzrayim and Pesach Doros, right? Pesach Mitzrayim was chipazon. Pesach Doros, ultimately again was no chipazon. Why? Because once you had the first Pesach, which initiated, right, took decisive action with haste, that allows future steps, so to speak, to be done benachas. So we'll continue tomorrow. Mazel tov, I'm finishing the first sif in Reb Tzaddik. Shkoyach.